Hi everyone, and welcome to Studio Jake. I, of course, am your host, Studio Jake. Before we dive into Rings of Power Episode 7, I wanted to just shout out my own fantasy novels. If you're tired of Hollywood making politically correct versions of your stuff, like Wheel of Time, Doctor Who, so on and so forth, you've got my novels. These are my first two right here. This is Cacophony, a paranormal novel. This is the first novel in my fantasy series, The Seven Royals, which the first book is All Good Things, followed by its sequel, Breaking the Stars. Definitely check them out. They're all available at Amazon.com or BarnesandNoble.com. However, if you want Breaking the Stars digital, you have to get that exclusively at BookLocker.com. However, the other two are available all over. So, with that in mind, we're going to dive in. So there will be spoilers talking about Episode 7. This one will be a little bit shorter because this episode nothing really happened in this episode. We see the fallout from the volcano. Galadriel and Theo are somehow separated from the rest of the villagers. It makes absolutely no sense and how they get separated, but they kind of go off to find more survivors. So Muriel helps Elendil lift a beam off someone for some reason. All over the village, the Numenor soldiers are trying to help them. We briefly see a scene that implies that Isildur died and whatnot. It's very sad and tragic, as you can tell by the tears. But, oh yeah, Harfoots! They exist! They've been missing for the last episode. But you see that the family catches up with the other Harfoots. They find the grove has been affected by the volcanic explosion. It's pretty much destroyed. The Meteor Man gets asked for help, and he does a spell, but then the power of it frightens all of them, and he looks kind of embarrassed. So we go to Elrond, who is pleading with Durin's father for access to the Mithril mine. The king refuses. Dissa, who is the wife of Durin, she tries to get him to defy his father, who's also named Durin, so I'm just going to call him the Dwarven King or Durin's father. At first, Durin decides to just tell Elrond, sorry, my dad said no, but then he witnesses a Mithril heal a leaf, and he decides to help the elves. Now, we get to Theo and Galadriel. You see orcs starting to march into the Southlands, and she admits that it's her fault. It is her fault. If she had been a better leader than earlier on, she would have been able to stop this. But they made her all wise, all powerful, all knowing. So the Numenor army are guiding the Southland people out of their Ashen home. They've kind of set up a camp, a base. Elendil searches for Isildur, and he finds the Queen Regent, who tells him that she saw Isildur die. Galadriel again speaks to Theo. Nothing happens other than she gives him her sword for some reason. I don't know why. So the Queen Regent, you find out, has been blinded by the explosion, but she asks Elendil to keep silent about it just until they get out of the Southlands. So the Harfoot chieftain, he gives Meteor Man a map and tells him that there's a human settlement he can go to, and then as he's leaving Nori's family, that's the littlest hobbit, she gives him an apple for his journey, I guess. So, and we go back to the conversation with Galadriel and Theo. Again, we find out another canon break. We find out that Galadriel's husband is dead, and he was killed by Sauron. So we go back to Durin and Elrond. Durin did defy his father, and they discover a large vein, but Durin's father is angry. He casts Elrond out. He and Durin have an argument, and he demotes Durin. So Durin's supposed to take over as king, but then his father demotes him. And the next morning, the Harfoots are surprised to find that there's apples everywhere. The Meteor Man did heal the grove. In fact, we see the three weirdos dressed in white. The lead one people were calling Eminem because he looks like Slim Shady, I guess, and he kind of does actually. So the Harfoots kind of figure out that they're coming, so they hide, but then Nori sees them about to follow the trail of the Meteor Man, so she interrupts them and tells them to move on. The three kind of act threatening toward her, so her dad steps in, but then they just set the whole encampment on fire. So the Numenor army, they've set up this encampment. They're taking the people to Southland there. They release Isildur's horse, and it flees into the wild. Galadriel and Theo find the encampment. He reunites with his mother, who I hope she spanked him. Galadriel and Bronwyn speak with the queen, and now at this point she can't hide the fact that she's blind, so they wrap her eyes in a cloth, it looks like, and she says, we're going to fall back for now, but Numenor will return. So the Harfoots are assessing their damage, and they're pretty much just thinking they're just going to give up. But Nori's father, he delivers a Braveheart message that is so cheesy and vague, but it somehow inspires everyone. And so Nori decides to go find the Meteor Man, and a few of the other Harfoots go to help her. So Bronwyn tells Galadriel that Halbrand is alive. He's severely wounded, though, because of the explosion, but they're going to take him to a nearby abandoned colony that they're going to use for their new home. Galadriel and Arondir bid them farewell and go off to speak to the Elf King. So Durin and Dissa, they discuss what happens. The king orders the Mithril to be sealed away, but then a Balrog awakens. So we cap off the episode with Adar, who's supposedly a Uruk, even though he looks exactly just like an elf. And he rallies the orc army and his human henchmen and renames the Southlands Mordor. So now, one thing I will say is a lot of people rag on the sets. I actually think the sets look fine. It's just anytime there's CGI involved or some sort of emotion, that's when they really look fake. Again, the costumes, they look like they were just bought at Hot Topic or a Halloween spirit store. Absolutely no thought goes into this. The acting is really terrible in this episode in particular. I think it's just because they didn't have anything to work with. And it's just we see these canon changes. Harfoots, who again aren't supposed to exist, and you can tell that they were just kind of shoved in because they play absolutely no role in the plot whatsoever. It's really kind of even weird that they're there. They could have easily put the Meteor Man with the Númenóreans or the people of the Southland. It would have had the same impact. There was no need to make proto-hobbits and to insert themselves into this. I mean, they have no connection to anything other than the Meteor Man, which again could have just as easily been passed off. So, Elendil, why is he acting like the way he is? He is supposed to be the last king of Númenor. They came over to what would eventually become the Kingdom of Gondor. And, he's acting like every chance the writers get, they just want to cut him at the knees. It's really stupid and embarrassing. And, of course, gotta rag on Galadriel. Again, what was the point of her scenes? Her and Theo have nothing in common. They've only known, and yet she's going to pour her heart out to him. This spoiled brat who caused the entire plot. He admits that he does, and she goes, no, and just head pats him. And it's like, yes, he did cause this whole problem. If he had just left everything alone, it would have been fine. But no, he was a spoiled brat the whole time. And same goes for her. She says, no, this is my fault. Yes, it is your fault. If you had been a leader, instead of driving your troops north and all that stuff, they wouldn't have betrayed you. If you had figured out that you weren't chasing a logo, but instead were chasing a map early on, this would have not have happened. Maybe the king and Elrond would have listened to you more. But no, Galadriel, she's this arrogant punk, and they keep trying to sell you like, oh, she's the protagonist, she's the hero. No. And also, another canon break, they make it where her husband is dead. Her husband is alive and well in the Third Age. He's one of the receivers of the Ring of Power. Now, obviously, in the show, they could make it where she remarries, I guess. But still, why go that route? Because she don't need no man. She's a whammon, a strong, powerful elf whammon. It's absolutely ridiculous and silly. And, honestly, too, how did Muriel help Elendil lift a beam when she was blinded? Like, are we really saying this man is so weak he needs a blind queen to help him Queen Regent to lift a beam? That is absolutely silly and ridiculous. And nothing against blind people in particular, but just this writing makes no freaking sense. And that about sums up the series. I don't know what's going to happen with the series finale. I think it's lame, and I just don't see it having a very good conclusion. Before I was kind of saying, oh, I could see how if it wasn't Lord of the Rings, how it would have some fans. This episode, which is the penultimate episode for season 1, totally destroyed that opinion of this. I don't think that it's a good show anymore. Very incredibly bad writing, and I don't think the finale is going to be any better. If you liked that video, please leave me a comment. Let me know what you think. Give it a thumbs up, and I would be honored today if you would subscribe. No matter what platform you're watching on, please subscribe, hit that follow button, share it out all over the place, and check me out on some of my other socials. I've got links in the description below. Also, check out my website, studiojakemedia.com, and consider supporting this channel on studiojakemedia.locals.com. It really helps us smaller creators out. I really appreciate it, and I'll see you next time right here on Studio Jake.